A second stimulus package deal is close to being signed, but is the guy from Kentucky holding it up because he's not getting his side of biscuits? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is LALATE. Hope you're great. This is afternoon's LALATE, our 2-hour programming block every day. Starts at 3:30 with the check, then at 4 o'clock goes to hazard pay, 4:30 with FPUC, and finally 5 o'clock with rent assistance. Big news minutes ago about the second stimulus package, which is very close to getting approved. I have the great news for you, and certainly the check is not the issue that's at hand. It's everything around the check that's holding up your check. So what I'm going to be doing in this video right off the bat is I'm going to tell you what has been agreed upon, what is still likely to be agreed upon, and what's clearly not been agreed upon. I'm going to go into incredible detail, and I'm going to cover more than just the check. So let's get right to it. There have been several agreed upon items in the second stimulus package to date. First, the check is agreed upon. There will be a second stimulus check. It will be $1,200 for non-dependents. It will land in your bank accounts in mid-March if you have electronic delivery set up. It will be paid to people on SSDI, SSI, Social Security, and railroad benefits. This is all really great news. Second, there's an agreement for FPUC, unemployment benefits, that jumps on top of PUA and UI, to be paid at $600 a week for a very short period of time, but more about that in a second. There's an agreement for rent eviction and foreclosure moratoriums. Next, fourth, there's an agreement for student debt payments to be halted, principal and interest, during the pandemic. Fifth, there's an agreement about the post office. The post office had asked for money. The Democrats had proposed a lot of money. The Republicans didn't want to pay that amount of money. Yesterday, they brought the Postmaster General into the negotiations, and they agreed upon the amount for the post office. Finally, sixth, there's an agreement about PPP loans. The Democrats did not propose any PPP money this time around. The Republicans asked for it, and the Democrats purportedly have agreed to offer another round of PPP lending money. Next, what are the items we don't know? We just heard what has been agreed upon. What items do we not know if there is an agreement? These are sort of the gray areas. They're not approved. We just don't know the status. First, we don't know for certain that the check for dependents will be $1,200. It's highly likely it will be, because that's what the Democrats propose. There's no indication by the Democrats that they're going to get off of that position. The Republicans proposed $500, but the Democrats simply just don't believe a $500 check is any type of stimulus. But we haven't had complete confirmation about that, but it's highly likely it's going to be the full $1,200. Next, we don't have confirmation about child support. The Democrats proposed that child support would not be taken out of the second stimulus package. The Republicans proposed it would. We don't have confirmation about that as well. It's likely it's going to fall on the side of the Democrats, not get taken out. Third, we have no confirmation yet about hazard pay. But Nancy Pelosi last night and this morning said that she's supporting hazard pay down to the minute. And the Republicans on the other side have never said anything negative about hazard pay. So it's highly likely that hazard pay will get approved, but perhaps not at the same numbers. Fourth, state funds. We clearly know that this has been an issue of negotiations and it has not been reached. We know this because they told it to us. State funds involves money that would go ultimately back to you, the citizens of states, for assistance on rent, assistance on testing, assistance on paying civil employees, assistance on food stamps, assistance on a lot of things, modernizing computer systems to get UI benefits out there. Both sides want to give money, but that amount of money has not been agreed upon. Finally, which items have simply not been agreed upon? These are areas that don't have an agreement. We know that they're not agreed upon because they've told us they have not agreed upon them. First, while we do have an agreement for FPUC $600 per week short term. We don't have an agreement for FPUC $600 long term. The Republicans have offered $600 per week FPUC short term. We've been reporting this since last Friday. But they have not agreed to it all the way to January 2021, which is what the Democrats propose. Yesterday, allegedly, they floated $400 a week to December as a counteroffer. That was also rejected. Next, we have an agreement for rent eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, but we don't have an agreement for rent grants, which is different. This is actually money coming back to you, which you pay to the landlord. Nancy Pelosi confirmed this morning. So we have an agreement for eviction moratoriums, which is really the most important, but we don't have one for grants. Next, we have an agreement about student debts loans not having to be repaid right now, but we don't have an agreement for student loan forgiveness, which means you would never have to pay it. That is also clearly not agreed upon. Liability insurance, that's the Mitch McConnell provision. Mitch McConnell doesn't want you to be able to sue your employer if you contract COVID-19 on the workforce unless it's intentional, a ridiculous legal standard. The Democrats don't support it, and we don't know if Mitch has pulled back on it. Most indications are he has not. More about that in a second. Fifth, the federal building. It's likely the federal building is not going to survive the negotiations, that ridiculous $3 billion federal building proposed by the Republicans. But we really just don't know if they're going to the mat for this ridiculous FBI building. Six, the meal deal. And I don't mean KFC. I don't mean the Happy Meal, which sometimes when it's Mitch McConnell, it's never a Happy Meal. The Democrats said this morning that they thought it was absolutely absurd. The Republicans are still talking about it. That's the idea that as you sit home hungry, unable to get food, unable to pay for food, the Republicans are proposing that you get a tax deduction to go out and spend money at a luxurious, nice lunch buffet and write it off your taxes. Yeah. Travel deal. Someone asked me about that in the comments. We clearly here do not have a deal yet on the travel deal. The travel deal is to allow you to deduct for your 2019 and 2020 taxes any amounts of money you spend on gas, hotel, and air for any purpose. Gas could be just driving down the street. And apparently the Democrats don't support that as well. Finally, airlines bailouts. The Democrats have suggest that they're not going to bail out the airlines one more time. The viewers of this channel don't want to bail out the airlines. And Steve Mnuchin, the lead negotiator for the Republicans, said he was not going to bail out the airlines. But Mitch and the president yesterday both came out and said, let's bail out those airlines again. So where are we on this deal, LALATE? Where's my money and what's going to happen? Well, Steve Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi 2 days ago confirmed to news that by Friday they will reach a deal. Now, this was a statement from both of them. It wasn't on the record, but it was communicated to a series of leading news reporters who said it and then confirmed it. The problem is that a lot of people don't have faith in that because Steve Mnuchin said that on his own record last week and didn't hold it to the point. Nancy Pelosi has made it very clear, and so has Chuck Schumer, that she's going to continue negotiating, and she's not done negotiating. The irony of the situation is what Mitch McConnell did this morning. Now, Mitch McConnell is sort of like, I don't know what the analogy would be, that he's like that person at the club that can't get in. I mean, he's literally that person. He has not been part of the negotiations. He has been excluded. I'm sure it's an ego hit. The negotiations are Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary to Donald Trump, Mark Meadows, Chief of Staff to Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi, head of the House, and Chuck Schumer. Those are the four people that negotiate every day for 2 hours, that negotiate again for 2 hours today. Mitch McConnell is not in those negotiations. His plan is not in those negotiations, and he said that he's ditching his own Mitch plan to adopt anything that those people do in the room. So what happened as we take out the garbage can, so metaphorical at my Mitch part of this video, what happened? Well, CNBC made the strange decision to have Mitch McConnell, who is not part of the negotiations, talk about the negotiations this morning. After yesterday, the audacity of this man appeared on the Senate floor and talked about stuff that was totally untrue, saying that the Democrats were not giving you $600 a week, not giving you eviction moratorium. It was really just awful. I mean, I tagged him and just said liar. I mean, it was really horrible. So Mitch appeared on CNBC, and guess what he said? He said that the deals are still $1 trillion apart. Now, what's interesting about that is that the Democrats' proposal is $3 trillion. His proposal, which the White House is not even supporting, is $1 trillion. So who has moved? Who has moved down because the difference between 1 and 3 is $2 trillion. It's not $1 trillion. He said the parties are $1 trillion apart, though, currently. Where are the concessions? Concessions means who gave up what and who still has something to give up. Well, the Democrats gave up a concession on PPP. They gave PPP to the Republicans, allegedly. The Democrats also confirmed that they gave up a concession for the post office. They gave less money to the post office because the post office said they can deal with the amount of money that the Republicans want to offer. The Republicans allegedly may have given a concession to give up the $500 second stimulus check for the dependents and go to $1,200. The Republicans have given strange concessions about FPUC that changes by the hour. They initially wanted $0. Then they wanted $100 a week. Then they wanted $200 a week. Then they wanted that ridiculous thing that said September 1st, we're going to do it based upon a calculation. They ditched that after my videos that said, and then all the other broadcasts that said, hey, you can't do this mathematical calculation. So Steve Mnuchin came back and said, we can't do a mathematical calculation. We'll offer you $600 a week for 1 week. That didn't float. So then he said, I'll do $400 a week for several weeks. That didn't float. The Republicans have also given a concession about student debt. So this, again, is the repayment is put on hold. It's not forgiven. The Republicans have given a concession about the post office, and they give a concession about state funds. So where are we, LLA? What's going to happen? What's going to happen is you're going to have a deal. I'm not going to sit here and say you're not going to have a deal. Other people could do that, and they could be wrong. You're going to have a deal. And for Mitch McConnell to really come out on broadcast news at 8:30, well, no, it was actually 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, very early in the morning, and give everyone a strange wake-up call to say, we'll have a second stimulus package deal in due time, over time, just made everyone's eyes roll. This is the man who a week ago said that a second stimulus package deal will be reached in a couple of weeks from now. Nancy Pelosi was not having it. And I want to make something very clear. The comments I read earlier on Mornings LA, which was a big hit, thank you for joining me, her comments were not about the Republican Party in general. They were about Mitch McConnell. She was asked, what do you think of the situation? Can you folks agree upon something? Of course, the ironic thing is that he's not in the room. So she doesn't have to agree with him at all. But she was asked this really sort of crazy question, can you parties agree upon something? And she said, well, the problem is that the Democrats introduced legislation 5 months ago which is the HEROES Act, which was passed by the House, is now in the Senate. And during that time, Mitch McConnell put the pause button. This is her words. And that Mitch McConnell, by pressing the pause button, presented no legislation, presented no bills, no stimulus checks, no rent eviction moratorium, nothing, no FPUC, nothing. He presented nothing. And said, we don't need to do this right now. And if you recall, I've been doing videos, about that enormously, in which Mitch said, you're a welfare state. You're staying home and getting rich on unemployment benefits. You don't need stimulus. You are manufacturing an economic situation that's as dire when it's not dire. And he basically disparaged the American public. Well, Nancy had her day this morning, and she basically said, I have been fighting to put food on Americans' tables, to have them get their unemployment benefits, to ensure that they don't go hungry, that they're not thrown from their houses. And she said, well, I'm trying to, with this legislation, ensure that you have money to pay for food. Mitch McConnell, on the other side, is ensuring that rich people get a tax deduction to go out to lunch and write it off their taxes in a meal deal. The comment, nothing hurts more than the truth, because that comment was completely true. That in the face of a pandemic when people are going hungry, can't afford food stamps. Oh, by the way, there is a concession on food stamps. There is progress on food stamps. She says, we're talking about people unable to pay for food. And you're talking about writing off nice business lunches at swanky restaurants. She said the lack of focus by Mitch McConnell has been really the problem. And ironically, the lead into the discussion was how well she gets along with Steve Mnuchin, which everyone really generally likes. He's a likable guy. He sometimes doesn't do the right thing. But as Treasury Secretary to Donald Trump and the office that's going to send you your stimulus check, he's a generally well-liked guy. He has a lot of respect. And unlike Mitch McConnell, he has a very good rapport with Nancy. So she's back in the room negotiating with him right now, and she will do so. So what should you expect in the next 24 hours? Well, Steve and Nancy allegedly represent that they're going to reach a deal, whatever the deal is, by tomorrow. I want to explain this to you right now because this is so important. I'm going to slow it down because no one really explains this because it's politics. If Nancy and Steve Mnuchin reach a deal tomorrow at, let's say, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and let's say they do it on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. in the morning, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm getting my check, LALATE? No. What it means is only that 4 people reached an agreement of principle in chatting in a room. Then what will happen is that the Senate will reconvene. They'll go back into the Senate, onto the floor of the Senate, and they'll have before them the HEROES Act, the Democratic proposal, because that's the only one that's on the table. The Republicans' one is not going anywhere. It's dead on arrival. We know that's because it hasn't passed the House. It'll never go anywhere. There'll be a modified HEROES Act, which will have all those modifications, which I just went through with you. And Mitch represents, and yes, you got to take it with a grain of salt, he represents that he will support whatever Nancy and Steve agree to, and that he thinks that the House will approve the bill. Here's the interesting rub. The Senate will approve the bill. The interesting bit is that the Senate is controlled by Republicans. But the number of Republicans to Democrats is very close. The Democrats 100% support their own stimulus package because they wrote it together. They support it. But Mitch McConnell literally this morning confirmed that his own Republicans don't support the Republican position and don't support the Democratic position. So he's not sure what the Republicans are going to do as a group at all. Ironically, and I'm not going to be, clairvoyant here or any Claire Danes or any Claire. What I want to say to you is that if Republicans can't agree upon what they're going to vote for, and I'm not being partisan, I'm saying what Mitch has actually said, then ultimately it may pass because there's so many Democrats voting for whatever Steve and Nancy do, despite whatever happens strangely with Mitch. Then what will then transpire is that when the vote comes to fruition and the vote is passed, and that can be done in 1 to 2 days, the president will then have the bill and sign the bill into law. And the president will support it because he had Steve Mnuchin negotiated for him. So if we have a deal Friday, Congress will remain in session. Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi both confirmed that they can keep them there to get it done. They could stay in session on Saturday. They could stay in session on Sunday. They can stay in session on Monday. You could see the law enacted on Tuesday. Steve Mnuchin has represented to you, I'm going to go slowly on this as well, that you'll get your second stimulus check electronically if you're set up for electronic delivery 7 days after it becomes law. That's not 7 days after Nancy and Steve make a deal. That's not 7 days after the Senate votes on the bill. 7 days after the president sits there and signs the law. 7 days. People ask me calendar days, business days, calendar days. But I've always also said to you, that's electronic. That's electronic delivery of funds if you're set up for electronic. And I would add up to 3 business days, not calendar days, for receipt of funds because some banks process funds slower. Some banks do it really overnight, so you could literally be the 8th day. Really great news. Coming up after this, I'm going to have some really exciting, great news about hazard pay, FPUC, and rent eviction. We know more now than ever before. I literally have 3 other pages I was going to go over in this video, but I'm going to be doing them in the next ones. Please go to the front of this channel, and there's going to be a button that says subscribe and alert. If you've not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and hit the alert button, because there's so much that's going to happen. I literally, in my heart of hearts, if I was to predict it, I think that you're going to hear a stimulus deal from Nancy and Steve at the strangest time. The strangest time over the next few days, over the next 24 for 48 hours. It could happen on Saturday. It could be at 8 o'clock at night Pacific Standard Time. It could just absolutely be crazy time. So I will be here. I will update you literally to the minute when I hear it. So that's why I want you to hit that subscribe and alert button. Coming up next is Hazard Pay. As always, stay motivated, stay informed, stay educated, and stay of LA for more.